All right, so this is the last part of this chapter, which is fluid and electrolyte and pH balance. And it's basically, it all circle around the same idea. If you understand the concept, it keep on repeating itself in different ways. So it's all about, is it acidosis, is it alkalosis? Okay, 7.35, 7.45. Above 7.45 is alkalosis. Under 7.35 is acidosis. What is the cause and what is the mechanism? That's the bottom line. What caused it? It can be respiratory, it can be metabolic. How are you going to compensate? By the respiratory or the kidney or the buffer. This is the bottom line. We will get details, but this is the main thing that I want you to understand. Is it acidosis or alkalosis? Acidosis. Okay, is it respiratory acidosis or metabolic acidosis? The other thing is it's alkalosis. Is it respiratory or is it metabolic? How to know? By exclusion. If you find it's related to the respiratory system, it's respiratory. If not, it's metabolic. What is it? Anything. Anything. It is metabolic. So the respiratory disorders in general, whatever it is, acidosis or alkalosis, it's all about carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide react with water, making carbonic acid, and the enzyme is carbonic anhydrase. I repeated that so many times. Okay, and this will make carbonic acid. It's acidosis, and this comes with hypoventilation or hyperventilation when carbon dioxide increase in the blood. Hypoventilation. Okay. So it can be respiratory. It's a respiratory system. It's hypoventilation. This is the cause. And in that case, carbon dioxide increase in the blood, react with water, metabolic acid, acidosis. If it is not, it's just metabolic. Like what? Like it can be metabolic acids, it can be fixed acids, it can be volatile acids. Volatile acids, I'm sorry, volatile acids come with the respiratory. Anything else is metabolic. Fixed acids, or you added acids, fixed acid, or you're getting rid of your, or you lost by carb, whatever it is. It's not respiratory anyway. Okay, so acidosis. It can be caused by respiratory, it can be caused by metabolic. Now, second part. Are we following? This is the cause. You have acidosis, you have alkalosis. What's the cause? It can be from the respiratory system. If not, it's called metabolic. This is the basics. Now, you already have acidosis, whatever the reason is. You have acidosis. What do you mean by have acidosis? I mean that it's under 7.35. So now, whatever the reason is, how is it compensated or what is the response? So if you started by adding hydrogen for whatever reason, you can add hydrogen by different ways. Hydrogen will go up and you're going to respond by the renal system and you're going to respond by the respiratory system. Respiratory system, you're going to increase the respiratory rate. What do you call it? Increasing respiratory rate. Hyperventilation. So when you hyperventilate, you get rid of carbon dioxide, you get rid of carbonic acid, you get rid of the acidosis. Is the kidney going to say something about this? Of course, both of them, they are going to respond. Both of them, beside the buffer as well. So you have three tools. I mentioned that last time. Kidney, respiratory system, and buffer. All three are going to work on it until it goes back to normal. What's the response of the kidney? Well, it is acidosis. We will get rid of hydrogen and reserve the bicarb. That's it. On the other hand, if it is alkalosis, yeah, we're removing hydrogen for some unknown reason. The respiratory system is going to compensate, and the renal system or the kidney is going to compensate. How? It's alkalosis. We're going to decrease. This is a compensation, the response. You're going to decrease the respiration, which is hypoventilation. Kidney, on the other hand, will conserve hydrogen and get rid of bicarb. What's get rid means? Is it secretion or reabsorption? Secretion. And what do you call it when you reserve? Reabsorption. So these are the compensatory mechanisms of the kidney. So for respiratory acidosis, it is hypocapnia, causes. And how to respond? Hypercapnia. Start with what? Hypoventilation. What's your response? Hyperventilation. So if it starts with hypoventilation, I mentioned it several times. Respiratory acidosis from what? Hypoventilation. Retaining carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide react with water, carbonic acid. Carbonic anhydrase is the enzyme. I mentioned it like 10 times, so you can't forget it. So what will happen? Increased carbon dioxide. And what do you call increased carbon dioxide? Hypercapnia. Hypercapnia. And hypercapnia is increased carbon dioxide reacting with water and so on. So if this is respiratory acidosis, there are two types of that. Isn't it both of them happen because of the hypoventilation? Yes. But sometimes it happens all of a sudden, severe condition. You stopped breathing for some severe condition, and sometimes it comes gradually. So this is the acute versus chronic acidosis. Acute acidosis, the decline in the pH goes fast. Something happened, they have an accident, you're not breathing well, and all of a sudden it goes from 7.35, 7.3, 7.25, 7.2. It goes like that really fast. And this can be life-threatening. On the other hand, it can be chronic, like you're having a chronic condition. You're like having bronchitis for a long time. You are a heavy smoker, so your lung is not doing the work, but it takes time. It takes time. So if it takes time, you do have the time for compensation, and this is not life-threatening because you have the compensatory mechanisms. As long as it's still working, there is no failure. So here it is, same thing. For acidosis, it's the opposite. Respiratory acidosis is caused by what? Hypo or hyperventilation? Hyperventilation. Hyperventilation. When you hyperventilate, you get rid of more carbon dioxide. So carbon dioxide in the blood drops. Less reaction with water, less carbonic acid. This is alkalosis. So it is hyperventilation that causes. And the response is what I mentioned before. Both kidney and lung are going to fix the condition, which we call it response or compensation. Both of them are the same. Okay, this is for the respiratory. Acidosis, alkalosis. How about for metabolic? Metabolic acidosis can be caused by adding hydrogen or getting rid of bicarb. It's all about the same idea. It's always the same. You have two things, hydrogen and bicarb, which is the same as OH. You have both of them. More hydrogen acidosis, more bicarb is alkalosis. You always have this imbalance between those two, whatever the reason is. So in this case, metabolic, it means nothing wrong with the respiratory system, right? This is how I know it's metabolic. What's the cause? Anything, but not respiration. So what, like what? Like lactic acidosis. If you're doing strenuous exercise, which is the anaerobic, you will end up, your mitochondria is not going to be working fine, and you will add up lactic acid. Did this come from the respiratory system? No, it's lactic acidosis from the exercise. They have nothing to do with the respiratory system. Ketoacidosis is something else. And I talked about that. Remember, diabetes, insulin is not working fine. The cells take anything and use it. You end up reducing the keto acids. So here it is. Or this is one way, adding. Or how about you're not getting rid of hydrogen? We should get rid of hydrogen. If you don't get rid of hydrogen, the hydrogen will accumulate in the blood. And is that acidosis or alkalosis? Acidosis, is that respiratory or metabolic? Metabolic. It's have nothing to do with the respiration, right? It's the kidney. It's the kidney, not the respiratory system. Or severe bicarb loss. You are losing a lot of bicarb. How can we lose the bicarb? If you guys remember from the digestive system, which step did we add bicarb? Do you remember when the chyme go to the duodenum and then the bicarb come on it from the pancreas, right? So it's from the duodenum where you load the bicarb. So if you're having diarrhea, that bicarbonated contents, you will get rid of it really fast. So you're losing a lot of bicarb, you end up getting acidosis. Okay? So it can be any one of those, as long as it is not respiratory. And the response is the same thing. It's common sense. I have alkalosis, so now you are going to react lung by hypoventilation, kidney by getting rid of hydrogen and restoring or keeping the bicarb. Metabolic alkalosis is the opposite, which is you're losing too much hydrogen or you're retaining too much bicarb. How can I lose hydrogen? Hydrogen mean acid, isn't it? What is the stomach content? Is it acidic or alkali or neutral? Acidic. So what happened when you vomit? You're losing acid. So what you get? Acidosis. Acidosis. Or if you gain bicarb, how can I gain bicarb? What do you mean gaining bicarb? It's different ways. One of them is you can take a lot of the antacids. Do you know these antacids over the counter? You're supposed to take a couple of those, but if you take like 7, 8, 10, that's too much. It's bicarb. What you're taking here is medicated, meant. It's bicarb. Too much. Okay? Or you're not getting rid of the bicarb. So again, acidosis can be respiratory or metabolic. Alkalosis can be respiratory or metabolic. If you think or if you see somebody having abnormality, imbalance, if it is balanced, it's 7.35, 7.45. What if it goes under or above that? It's disorder, right? It's not normal anymore. Okay, two scenarios. Not normal. You mean acidosis under 7.35 or you mean alkalosis above 7.45? We did the test and we find it under 7.35. It is acidosis, right? How to know if it is respiratory or metabolic? Measure the carbon dioxide. If the carbon dioxide increase, it is respiratory. If it is decreased, it is metabolic. This is how to know them from each other. Carbon dioxide. Okay, it is. I found out that carbon dioxide is high, so I know now it is respiratory. It can be acute, it can be chronic. How to know? If you find bicarb normal, it is acute. If you find it increased, it's chronic. Why? Because if it is acute, you didn't have the, remember acute? It happened all of a sudden, right? You didn't have the time to compensate. How are you going to compensate? By adding bicarb, right? Did you have the time to add bicarb? No. So bicarb here is normal. How about if it is increased? It means it's chronic. Why? Because it's happening slowly and your compensation or compensatory mechanisms are working, right? And that's how you were able to compensate by increasing the bicarb. Something like asthma, emphysema, bronchitis. Do we know these conditions? Asthma is when you can't breathe well. That's lead to acidosis, obviously. But this is chronic because asthma doesn't happen all of a sudden like life-threatening, right? It comes and goes, and you take medications and stuff. But on the long term, it will lead to chronic acidosis. Emphysema is chronic condition where the lung start to the alveoli start to break down and stop doing the job. I don't want to go too much into the details. We need to finish. So how about if I found that the carbon dioxide is normal or decreased? This means it's not respiratory. It's metabolic. Is it acute or chronic? Acute, it will be normal. Why? You didn't have the time to compensate. It's the same idea. What if it's chronic? You do have the time. So your respiratory compensation will work and you will see that carbon dioxide decreased. And if that's the case, there might be something called an ion gap. An ion gap is the difference between positives and negatives. Sodium concentration minus the two negatives, which is bicarb and chloride. If it is normal, it is diarrhea. If it is abnormal, it is something else. Like lactic acidosis, ketoacidosis, chronic renal failure, and so on. How about if I measure it and I find it above 7.45? I know this is alkalosis or alkalemia, same thing. How do I know? Check the PCO2, same thing. If it is decreased, then the condition is coming from the respiratory system. If it increased, it's not coming from the respiratory system. If it's coming from the respiratory system, it's usually hyperventilation. How to know acute from chronic? Same idea. Measure the bicarb. If it is normal, it's acute. You didn't have the time to compensate. Exactly same idea. Chronic, you do have the time to compensate. So carbon bicarb is going to decrease if that's the case. And acute respiratory alkalosis can be like fever, panic attacks. This is something that happened all of a sudden, and you don't and you breathe too much. In panic attacks, did you see that before? People, right? It happened all of a sudden, so it's acute. Versus if there is another problem that's making it slowly, it will be chronic. With aging, everything deteriorates, but it's something that you should know that the fetal pH is buffered mainly um by the kidney, maternal kidney, because kidney and the lung are not working yet in the fetus. So it's usually by the mom. This is the thing. For the newborn, the body water is about 75%. What's the body water percentage in females? 50%. How about males? 60%. Here it is, 75%. Okay? Females 50, males 60, newborn 75%. Three-quarters of his weight is water. Aging process, everything deteriorates. It goes gradually. If it is 60%, it goes down, become 50, 55%. Same for females. So the bottom line is for the water, with aging, water percentage decrease. This is the bottom line. It's 50, 60. Yes, it will be 47, 45, whatever, right? In males, it's 60. Yes, it will be 55, 57, just like that. The abilities are going to drop. The ability to restore water will drop. The ability for glomerular filtration drops. The response to the different hormones is going to decrease. The skin will become thinner and you lose more water. Response to ADH and aldosterone is going to decrease. The muscle mass decrease and you're losing the contents. By the way, where does ADH and aldosterone work? Which part of the nephron? Distal. Distal. And where do we absorb 100% of the nutrients? Proximal. Yes. Okay, vital capacity is going to decrease. The lung ability is going to decrease with aging. Everything deteriorates. They get more disorders with the aging process.